Welcome to the Pretty Good at Talking podcast. Today we have the lesser half of the Triple Crown moms. We've got the Triple Crown dads getting together to do what I was tempted to call some mansplaining, but I don't think it turns out quite that way. It's a pretty fun conversation between these three guys, myself included. We've got Adam Bennett, who walked with the Bennett clan online, known as Kids Out Wild. You can find him on Instagram that way. And Olen and Danae Netteburg. This is Olen with us today. They are missionary doctors to Chad. They have a hospital there, or they have been in the past. So he has quite some interesting insight, as well as the fact that he walked these trails with very young kids, much younger than Adam and I did. I think you'll enjoy the show today. I would like to forewarn you that Adam's voice recording is not clear at the beginning, but does clear up as we go along. So it is difficult to hear what he says, but it's worth listening tight so you can catch what he's talking about. Again, this show is sponsored by Pretty Good at Walking, a lovely book that I wrote about our Pacific Crest Trail hike. It is available for you at all places where books are sold. So pick up a copy, listen to a copy. It's available on Audible as well. But enjoy the show. I had a lot of fun with it. I hope you do too.
Hey, everybody, this is a special one. We did the Triple Crown Moms before, so this is, if anything, it'll be a letdown. This is the Triple Crown Dads talking about family through hiking, and we're thinking of calling this segment Triple Crown Dads Family Through Hiking Mansplained. But it sounded like most of the ladies were not the logistics and gear, so we thought we'd spend a little time with that. But before we get started on that, the two of you tell us a little bit about yourselves and how on earth you got into this crazy endeavor of hiking the three major trails in the country with your family. And Adam, you've done a fourth, and Olen, you've gone to Europe a bit too. So you guys have done some crazy stuff. Olen, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm Olen Netteburg. My trail name is Spreadsheet because there's a lot of logistics. My wife is Danae. She's Queen Bee. And we both grew up in the Midwest, very flat. Somehow I just got like the backpacker's gear list. You remember Backpacking Magazine? Like once a year put out a gear list, a magazine full of the gear list. And just my geeky numbersness, I loved going through that thing and like picking out, this is the gear that I would get, whatever. You know, I'm a kid. I got no money. And I had been backpacking precisely 0 days of my life. But I was just infatuated with backpacking gear. Like, that's why we do this, is for the gear, I think. It's just an excuse to go get gear. But in high school, my buddy and I did a week-long backpacking trip, and we're like, all right, either we're taking everything or nothing. And we discovered that nothing was cheaper. So the two of us shared a backpack that was 12 pounds to go spend a week in the Smokies. And I mean, we like wrapped up with a thin little tarp at night. We cold soaked before cold soaking was a thing. We didn't actually soak. We just crunched on dry ramen. We were idiots, but we thought we were cool. We thought we were having fun. And we were having fun. And then I guess at some point in our marriage, I had mentioned it to my wife, and I didn't think that, much would happen of it. It's just kind of one of the things that we wanted to do. And then one day so we lived in Africa, and my wife was studying for her oral exams. She's a gynecologist. And she had to come back, and she was really stressed. And then all of a sudden, see all this Amazon stuff start popping up, like all these Amazon purchases of backpacking gear, like being mailed to my dad's house in America, where my wife is studying for her boards. And I was like, what's going on, dear? And she's like, I'm just stressed, and I need to like stress shop, and I think we should backpack the Appalachian Trail. I'm like, what? Like, we have our kids were like 2, 4, 6, and 8. I'm like, that's the worst idea in the world. Like, no, we're not doing that. But we did go back, and we went backpacking, like short little, 4 or 5, maybe 7-day stuff. We did, I think, 3 of those that year and 1 more the next year. And the kids actually kind of, they dug it. Like, they liked it. We're not pushing. It's do whatever the miles the kids want to do. And then a little bit later, so the kids were 4, 6, 8, and 11, actually. And man, we were just so burned out on our job in Africa. And we're like, all right, well, walking and sleeping in the woods sounds better than work right now. So let's go do that. But we didn't have any expectation to actually be able to finish. We're like, all right, kids, we're going to go start the Appalachian Trail. You don't know what that is, but that's okay. If it really sucks, we'll just stop. Otherwise, let's go for a month. Let's just go as a family, hang out for a month on the trail, and then reevaluate. And after a month, I mean, it was kid-led the whole way. After about it didn't take long at all. I mean, from the first day or two, the kids were pretty much leading out. It was daily checking in, and they just wanted to keep going.
Adam, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I live up in Washington, father of 4, married to Mindy. Grew up in the Cascades, hiking across on the PCT from time to time, and hiking little jaunts into Thru-Hiking when I was a kid, and always wanted to do the PCT. So then when you find out that there's other trails and that it all matches up into a Triple Crown, then of course you got to go big. So then you start having kids, and then you just got to drag down the rabbit hole with you. So that's what decided to do. So yeah, that's good, really.
Oh, I wanted to follow up maybe on your perspective on a Mindy story from the last time where she said you never told her about the dream and then dropped it on her as a life dream when your youngest was 2.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't know. I mean, when I was backpacking, like 90s, backpack was 65 pounds. You do like an 8-mile day and be like, yeah, that was a big day. And you weren't doing, nobody was doing 20-mile days. And then I remember going to like Andrew Spreadsheet. He did a little REI seminar, and he was sponsored by Go Light. And all of a sudden he did a Portland, Maine to Portland, it was a sea to sea. So he did Portland, Maine to the Olympic Peninsula. And he was crushing it. He was doing like, 20 to 40-mile days. And I was like, what the crap? And he was 13 pounds, and his winter weight, I mean, he was going through like Minnesota, Wisconsin, 18 pounds in a winter. And I mean, I was blown away, but also at that point, I was like, this is something that I could do with my family, because my kids can carry it. You could go, I mean, if packs are that light, we could go light, and we could get those kind of miles in. We could do the Pacific Crest Trail. And so all of a sudden it became one of those things like, yeah, we're going to do this. So that's kind of when.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Then it was just a matter of trying to afford it.
So tell me for each of you how it transitioned from a single thru-hike dream to a Triple Crown dream. Adam, you want to go first?
My oldest, I had 3 summers left with her before she went to college by the time we started the Pacific Crest Trail. And my youngest had just turned. And so we kind of like gone, okay, this is it. This is where we're at. And so let's start hiking. And we just decided we're going to do the Pacific Crest Trail this year. Actually, we had thought maybe we'd start with the Appalachian Trail, because it seemed like the resupplies would be easier as we hiked, because it was just more established and there was more towns along the way. But then we put in for our permits, and I was like, if we get our permit, we'll just go with BCT. And actually having family all over the West Coast, or, it was fairly easy for us to, get help if we needed something way in California or Oregon or Washington, obviously. So anyhow, yeah, we got our permits. And so we're like, yeah, okay. So we're starting with BCT. And then, so that was our original goal. Is like, we got 3 summers left with our oldest before she takes off to college. And then, I'm sure, Vince, as you're seeing with your kids as they take off to school, it's hard to get them back home for any kind of meaningful time. And I just wanted to have that kind of like lasting impression, to like imprint into their lives. Like, look, this is really important. Like, whatever it is, whether it's nature, whether it's togetherness as a family, whether it's, setting a goal of like getting to the next resupply, or getting to the northern terminus or the southern terminus or whatever it might be. Like, that's, I want you to be able to, let's do this together. And so anyhow, it started with 1 trail, but we knew it was always going to be at least 3. It ended up being 4 because, COVID is Wiley head in there somewhere. And so that kind of threw things off for a little bit. But about halfway through that summer of COVID, it was long enough that we weren't able to start our hike. So we actually did the Pacific Northwest Trail because it was close to home. And so we could actually, we could leave the state. There wasn't any like problems with us, like starting in Montana. And we were back in Washington before Washington Washington was in COVID lockdowns for a lot longer than most states. So by the time we were back in Washington, they kind of locked down the state again, but we were in our home state, so we were legit. And so we just picked up a bonus trail to our Triple Crown. So
There you go.
Yeah, it was cool.
You said your oldest had 3 years. Did that bonus trail push her college out a little bit?
It didn't, but she actually, Zira Amazon, she didn't actually do that Appalachian Trail with us. She was on a mission for our church.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So,
and she did that as a gap year?
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. She was gone 18 months. So she's back in college now, and maybe I'll do the Appalachian Trail with her when she graduates from college. Least favorite of the big three, but I would do it again just to be with her and maybe go southbound.
Does she have that in her head as a thing to finish?
I think anybody that does, if you do one trail, okay, fine. But if you do two of the three, I think everybody's like, okay, fine, I've got to do the third. So she does. She does.
That's cool. All right, Olen, how about you?
Oh, I love hearing you guys tell your stories. It's so much the same emotion, so much the same everything. Like I get it. That's really cool. The one thing that we did differently is we really didn't have a plan to do 3 trails. Our first day on the Appalachian Trail, I think we did like 3 miles. That was it. Then we had like a big 7-mile day, and then I think it was like day 8 or something on the AT. We were like going for an 8-mile day, like our big day. And then again, COVID kind of made things wonky. So we had to go an extra 3. So it was like 11.3 miles. And the kids did it, and they're still happy. They're still running around. They're still having fun. And I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe we can finish the AT. All right, cool. And then we got to maybe 2 weeks short of finishing the AT. We're headed down toward Springer in Georgia. And the kids are like, well, okay, so we're going to finish in a couple weeks. Then we're going to go back to Africa. And then what? Like, are we never hiking again? Like, what else is out there? Are there other trails like this? I was like, well, as a matter of fact, since you asked, and I whipped out my phone and brought up, the first thing that came up when I did a search was like 2 guys kind of joking from one of the hiker magazines. And they're kind of pitting their articles against each other, CDT versus PCT. Which one is better? So I'm like, all right, kids, here's the CDT, and I read them that article. I'm like, here's the PCT, and I read them that article. And I was like, so there are other trails. I'm like, can we do them? And I was like, yeah, like, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure what time and money and how life is going to take us. But, I mean, you guys want to do another one? And they're like, yeah. I was like, all right, well, which one? And they were like, the CDT. And I was like, why? And they're like, well, if we only get a crack at one, we want to do the one that says that it's the hardest, just to see if we can do it. And I was like, you don't understand. Like, this is big elevation. These are big miles. This is big weather. This is big resupplies, big desert. It's just big. Like, this is a big, like, this is, after the AT, I kept saying, this is a real trail, as if the AT isn't a real trail, which it's a great trail. It is a real trail. But I kept saying, oh, this is a real trail. The CDT, this is a real trail. And they're like, well, if we fail, that's okay. We know that we tried. I was like, all right. So then, the next year became 2 years later, because lo and behold, like 3 weeks before we finished like 6 weeks, I don't know, shortly before we finished the Appalachian Trail, like it's that one night where you get in early and you get laundry done and you get your resupply done and you get a shower and you fall into bed just a little bit early, and we got pregnant. So we actually finished the AT pregnant. The one night you get a shower, right? So the next year was actually having a baby. And my wife was like, we can still do the CDT. We'll just make it up to like Denver. I'll hop off the trail in Denver, have a baby. We'll wait a couple weeks and we'll finish. I'm like, yeah, I know that's a terrible idea. My wife is a gynecologist, right? Like, she should know better. So then we finished the CDT, and like immediately, I think right before we finished the CDT, the kids are like, but Dad, there's only one left. And I was like, all right. I mean, if you guys want to do it, we'll see what time and money allows. And if we get the opportunity, and sure enough, the next year, we're like, all right, we have a chance. You guys still want to do it? And the kids were full bore. Absolutely. You know, it was great. And what Adam said is so true. Like, you're a team, like you're doing this together, and the kids pick up a sense of teamwork, of doing stuff together, of being able to, which I living in a house, I see this missing all the time. Like, but when you're out on trail, the kids just figured out the routine. Like, okay, we know what needs to happen. Like, water has to be filtered, food has to be cooked, tents have to be put up, or backpacks have to be packed, food has to get hung. Like, whatever the things were, they just looked around, they saw what needed to be done, and they pitched in and did it without being asked. And I was like, who are these kids? Like, this doesn't happen at home. And they're not complaining, like they're not asking for screens. They're just out there doing this as a team, taking on their own responsibility. We're together 24/7. I mean, this is forced time together, and we're cherishing it. And it was just absolutely fantastic. It's something that, seriously, not a single week goes by where I'm like, man, I would rather be back out on the trail again. Like, that was just epic.
Well, I should probably at least tell about the moment that we decided to, well, sorry, let me say that differently, that I decided that we should Triple Crown. I came home from the PCT. I hit the southern border and I hit the wall, and I just looked through a hole in the wall, and I was like, Aiden, man, I just want to keep walking. Like, I would go forever. And that's the way I felt. And I came home, and there's just such euphoria around it. And, you know, it was such an amazing experience with them that I wanted it to never end. And I kind of, you know, I did little odd jobs here, did some remodel jobs and this and that and the other. But I always kind of had my head down, and I'd walk way too far every day in the Florida woods, in the Florida heat, and I still was enjoying it. And then I think it really, I would attribute a significant portion of it to seeing the Bennett's post that they were going to do the Triple Crown. And I came home and I said, the moment that I came home was when Monica was finishing up designing the homeschool curriculum for the next 2 years. And I said, hey, I think we need to do the Triple Crown. So we followed in the wake of their dream was our Triple Crown. And of course, we were able to complete it and do it that next year because we had chosen the CDT, and the CDT was wide open. Of all the trails, it was the only one that was really wide open. I'm fascinated at how you guys got through in the AT, because that was such a mess over there. And then the PCT was also very difficult for people. But the CDT was an easy year to do it. And it was really a fun one. We did both of our Western trails southbound, and so we were pretty well alone for both of those. So anyway, that's how we ended up in the dream. So thanks, Adam. And Monica, thanks you too. Now, in hindsight, she was not happy with you for a while, I can tell you.
Retroactive gratitude right there.
So a question that pops into my head is for you guys, because obviously, you know, we've had the ladies on, and they were talking about their experience and kind of some of their roles. What kind of roles did you fill with your family as a dad that were sort of unique? In what ways did you find yourself maybe growing into that role? The expectations and the demands and the connectedness of a father in that environment are significantly greater than we tend to get away with in the normalcy of life. And something about the trail really does demand more presence and more interaction. But I'd be interested to know how your role as a father inside the family changed and grew, and how it manifested on the trail.
Okay, so I heard this, and I'm 100% on board with it, which is like nature, like, gives you a big cushion for your flaws as a parent. And so I think, you know, like the role that I was taking up was very flawed because it's me. But being on the trail actually was very helpful because, you know, like nature kind of takes that into account. But, you know, as far as like my position was kind of like to be the person that kind of had to be in charge as far as like the general, like, okay, like we have to push this many miles. And I've heard this, you know, in your accounts, Vince, as far as like, okay, these are the miles that we have to get because we got to get through the Sierras, not to the Sierras, through the Sierras by this time. And so you're kind of calculating these miles as you go. And that's exactly what I think probably everybody has to, you know, you have to have that in mind where you're like, oh, this is what we're at, you know, as far as like this next resupply, this is how many miles we have to get, you know, a day to get to this next resupply. And this is how many miles we have to get, you know, per day on average to get, you know, to the end of the trail before the snow hits. So essentially that's what my role was. It was kind of like to kind of track and see if we're on track and make sure that we're staying within budget, within budget, both fiscally and as far as paying the mile. You know, we got to make sure that those miles are getting paid. And so that's kind of where we're at.
Did you have a lot of pushback or from any of the kids, or was it pretty easy to get buy-in, or how'd that go for you?
I didn't really have much pushback. I think everybody, like, especially kind of can explain it. Like, look, if we don't start hiking until 11 o'clock, right, and we got to push, however many miles, that means we're going to get into camp at midnight. So do you want to hike at midnight, or do you want to wake up and, start hiking early? It's funny as we've talked to, especially talking with you guys as far as like the way you guys hike. I mean, we wake up and pretty much, hit the trail, around a little after sunup, but then we take an hour to kick our feet up, take our shoes off, for lunch. And it was almost like a reset, as far as like all your feet felt better, everything felt better. And then we'd hike until dinner time, eat dinner, and then maybe hike like another couple hours after dinner. And everybody got really comfortable with that setup. So it was like, yeah, okay, sun's up, we're hiking, and we did come up with some rules as far as like, our breakfasts were really simple. We just had bars. And so it was like, hey, packs on, and you can start eating once you start walking. And so we all kind of, we put our packs on, we say a little prayer, and then we start walking, and then everybody, start eating as we walk. And so that was kind of a way that we could get out of camp early in the morning and not be delayed, because having breakfast or whatever, it just took up more time. And so it's just a matter of trying to speed up the process and streamline things a little bit. I did hike the Arizona Trail just by myself, and it was a totally different animal. And you probably saw it too, Vance, when you were just hiking with like maybe just you or Georgia, just like so much faster. Like breaking camp was so much quicker. So it was like, oh my gosh, I'm packed up. Somebody's got to kind of the whip a little bit and be like, yep, we're doing this and we got to go. So yeah.
About every third day, I'd have a lecture from Monica or Aiden would pull me aside and say, "Hey, you're kind of mean in the mornings. Like you've got to find a way to be satisfied. We are slow getting out." And I was like, I don't know. Aiden wrote a day in the life sort of report about halfway through the trail, and it was about 9 o'clock. Dad stops being grumpy. Like it was like every morning I was so bad.
That's not true. At 9 o'clock, I just start faking
That's
it.
right. Yeah, that's right. That's great. Good stuff. All right, Olen, what about you?
Yeah, so I guess our roles changed and didn't change at the same time. In Africa, we had been pretty absent parents. I mean, we ran a hospital and we were just gone like constantly. We lived on hospital property, so physically we were only a couple hundred yards away from the kids all day, but it was so hard to get back home to see them. And then go from that to where you're hiking, and I mean, you're within eye shot of your kids 24/7 all the time. That was a big change, but what we realized is that like that's what kids want, and at least our kids, and the Appalachian Trail, they were ages 4 to 11, at least kids that age. Like all they really want in life is their parents' attention. And now, bam, like they have it all the time. And so that was a great motivator for my kids. It was also kind of like a role just to be engaged. Because when the kids are, when you got a 4-year-old, what we realized is if you can engage her brain, she has no idea whether or not her legs are tired. Like she's just going to go. She's going to go. If you just talk to her about the philosophical minutia of Paw Patrol, or like Frozen, sing the Frozen soundtrack for the 412th time today, or whatever it is, she's excited about it. Veggie Tales, we're singing Veggie Tales, we're telling stories, we played 20 questions. The first time we played 20 questions with my 6-year-old, what I was supposed to guess was a robot marrying a unicorn. And I'm like, no, that's not how this game works. But it was just being like mentally engaged with them the whole time was far more taxing than anything physically that we suffered. I was mentally exhausting, but it's like, it's just pure parenthood. It was so much fun. So, like we got to know the kids really well. That was really great. My role was, to kind of be the mule, carry all the stuff and yeah, really kind of motivate the 4-year-old to go. People do hike these trails with just one kid. And props to them, because I don't know how you do that. At least I had other kids that, they could like entertain each other, motivate each other. So I wasn't on 24 hours a day, but yeah, it was challenging. And it was, for us, we started with the AT, so it was less pressured by season than the PCT and the CDT are in terms of, you got to beat the snowfall, beat whatever. But I started off with a spreadsheet of like all the foods with calories, like calories per gram and calories per dollar, and like trying to figure out how we can afford this, like getting the food down and cheapest, how I can carry all the food, knowing exactly where the water was, where the potential campsites were. I had a spreadsheet right from the beginning that was like, all right, we're going to punch in this date. Like if we want to make October 13 the final date, or like November 7 the final date, whatever, you can just put in the date you want, and it will tell you how many miles a day you have to average. And then every day you just punch in the mile mark you started at, the mile mark you finished at, and it calculates it all, what your average is, what you have to average, all those things. I just made spreadsheet after spreadsheet. Like I had the weather of especially the CDT and PCT, like, I mean, every little section of that trail with snowfall, rainfall, high-low temps, mean temps, snow melt, like just everything to try to figure out where we could go when, so we could actually piece together the entire trail in one go. Because little legs don't go fast, but they can go far. I mean, it's unbelievable how what kids can build up to. When our daughter was 4, she heard other AT hikers talking about a 30-mile day. And she's like, what's that? I want to try that. A 4-year-old saying she must try 30 miles. She has no idea what it is, but we're like, okay, well, let's try it in this flat section of New Jersey.
That's amazing.
And I mean, her brain like just completely melted and shut down, and she's a zombie walking, but her little legs are still pumping away. They're fine. And the next day she pops up. She's not tired at all, but she wasn't sleepwalking, but she was pretty close to sleepwalking. And when she was 7, I mean, she did like a 40+ mile day, and just, it's unbelievable what they're capable of, but they weren't fast. I mean, we just could not get those little legs to go fast. So many nights, I mean, we were hiking into the night because they weren't tired. Like they weren't tired at all, but the sun's going down and they kind of know what miles we got to do if they want to finish. And the whole time I was like, yeah, I mean, every day we're like, we don't have to finish the trail. It's okay, whatever. And every day they were like, no, we want to finish. I mean, there were bad hours. Like every kid had a time when they sat down and cried, like, I don't want to do this anymore. But legitimately, honestly, by the end of every single day, the kids wanted to keep going. There was never a day where they're going to bed wanting to get off trail. There were mornings that were cold and wet. We're like, oh, I don't want to do this. And that also took some pretending to be chipper and happy when you're really not, and you just want to be as miserable as they are, but you have to fake it. But yeah, no, by and large, it was our motivation. It was our drive. It was our initiation into it. But after going for a little bit, the kids drove us a lot. Like they wanted to go. But yeah, so then when we went on to the CDT, we had a baby. I mean, we had like an 8-month. Was she 8? I think she was 8 when we started. Yeah, she was like 8 months old when we started. So my wife carried the baby, and then we have to carry, baby gear, and my wife is carrying the baby, so she can't carry any weight. So then I had this insane pack. And we're starting in New Mexico where we're not doing big days. We're doing, not big mile days when we're starting. So I've got to carry like a day and a half worth of water for 7 people. It was like first day, I've got like bleeding bruises on my hips. It was crazy, but I was very, very, very much so the mule on that. The kids were a little bit older. The kids had kind of known what to do. So they were good at motivating and encouraging each other, keeping each other happy. I wasn't quite having to kind of mind ninja them into being happy down the trail at that point. And then actually when we did the PCT, the baby had grown too heavy for my wife. So I carried the baby on the PCT and I was lighter than ever. I thought that was great. Plus my oldest he was 14. Yeah, so he became he wasn't carrying more than me, but he was carrying a significant amount of weight. So I was rarely over 50 pounds on the PCT. I was feeling pretty good about things by then.
Good night, 50. I don't think I ever carried 50. Did you? Maybe on a big water carry, but I still think I never touched 50.
No, even finishing in Glacier, like I finished with a 75-pound pack in Glacier on the CDT. And in New Mexico across the desert, it was well over 100 pounds. Like it was crazy. It was off. Smile and make it, fake it, pretend that you're having a good time. And it was a good time. But boy, yeah, that was, I looked at people with like 60-pound packs and I was like, oh, if I could only get down to 60. That was my goal and I never made it. But on the PCT, I never hit 60.
Did you wear boots?
And so on the AT, we wore boots, which looking back on it, I mean, we didn't know any better. And plus, we carried all of our old garbage gear that was really heavy. And I was like, we don't need new stuff. We can just carry everything really heavy. Who cares? I just got to keep up with a 4-year-old. And then after a week, 2 weeks, I was like, let's go see if we can drop some weight. Hey, let's get 50 pounds lighter here as a group. So then on the CDT, we went the opposite way, and we actually did zero shoes. So, I mean, like ultra thin, and I think they would have worked out really, really well. My wife liked them. She still wears them. She thought they were the best shoes ever. She still loves them. I think just with how heavy my pack was, that was a bad idea. If I were going to do ultralight, I'm sure it would have been fine. But yeah, then on the PCT, I did the typical, I started out with oboes trail runners and then ultra trail runners. And yeah, I tried topo trail. I tried everything. That's the place where you don't want to save money is on your feet. If you're spending money, spend it on your feet. Oh, man. It usually took, after the AT, so after the CDT, we had 8 months before we started the PCT, and I was still hobbling. The day we started the PCT, I was still hobbling. My feet had just never recovered. Now they're kind of okay. They're just numb at times, but they don't really hurt anymore.
Adam, did you ever carry heavy weight like that? I don't think you did either, did you?
Not heavy. I mean, maybe 40, but that was just heavy, maybe big water carries, big food carries, but we quickly ate and drank through that.
And my kids were old enough that I felt comfortable saying, if you want it, you can carry it. And if you can't carry it, you can't have it. So that was a lot easier. Plus, you're right, being able to go bigger miles, especially in the desert, the stretches between water could be a killer.
Yeah, and we were just like, our first day was like 8 miles. I think our second day was 12 miles down in New Mexico. I think we had a couple 12-mile days. Then we got to a 14 and thought we were on top of the world. And yeah, it was, we just didn't have our legs. We trained for 0 of the hikes. We did shakedown for 0 of the hikes. I mean, we just went out there.
I think what would be fun maybe to do is, because, we have there's that Facebook group, which is really fun. It's Families That Thru-Hike. It's largely populated by what would be the wives of the people that are going to be doing the hiking. So I'm assuming that at some point they would direct their husbands into some action. And I think it might be kind of fun to get you guys' perspective, or sort of like what you would offer as guidance to somebody who is setting about beginning to outfit and prepare their family for a hike like this of significant distance, multiple sections, a long distance. I mean, presuming we're talking about one of these 3 trails would be the easiest way to talk about it. But if the truth is, if somebody's setting out to do the long trail, it's all the same thing. It's 300 miles or whatever it is. So you got to do a lot of different sections. So what would you, maybe not even, you don't have to guide it like that, what would you do different, but how would you advise somebody to begin trying to crack this nut? Because it's a lot it's a big bite to take on.
So Mindy and I, when we were hiking the PCT and the BNT, we were in the Gossamer Gear Mariposas, and I always felt like I was really gentle with those packs as far as I'd get them on, get them off. And I would watch my son pick up his Osprey by like one strap, take a wild, swing at it and swing it onto his back, and then I'd see him like flop down, onto his back. He had a trail named Turtle where he just flop on his back. And so, I mean, one of the things was like we hiked a lot in Osprey packs, and having that like a lifetime warranty on those packs, because we had to swap them out. We had to swap them out a few times, was a big money saver for us. And they did hold up. Like if I'd given my son that same Gossamer Gear pack, and don't get me wrong, that pack was a great pack and very comfortable. Mindy loved it. I loved it. It is not a teenage boy like that. He would have just blown that thing apart within 100 miles. So I kind of I would have steered people towards like Osprey. They've got a lifetime warranty. Go with it. Buy that pack, and because you're going to abuse the crap out of it, and take advantage of that. And then like Olen was saying, like, don't scrimp on the shoes. Like, you got to find the right shoes, but you know, you can't make them last longer than they're going to last, or your feet are. I think those are two big ones. So, I don't know, beyond that, like, I always felt too, like, we could get into some pretty bad weather, and to have like a good tent and to be able to get warm was really important. And I've heard some stories from you, Vince, about like some cold days where where you were wet and you were snuggled up, and like, it was just brutal. But like, I always felt like, hey, you got to be able to get into some shelter and get comfortable. And I remember reading something early on, like, as far as like the amount of people that made it through a successful completion of a thru-hike were ones that actually slept well. And so, like, if it takes a 15-degree, sleeping bag, and it's going to cost you an extra, 5 ounces, that's probably 5 ounces well spent, So Mindy and I, we actually, like, we're sleeping on a double wide mat that's a big Agnes, and it weighs quite a bit. I mean, it's a heavy mat, but it's 3 inches thick, and she can snuggle right up next to me, and we have a double wide quilt. So because of that, I can go, like, I sleep really warm and she sleeps really cold, but she's just sleeps right up next to me, and I'm able to keep her warm. And so we're actually kind of saved a little bit that way, both in that was just one quilt that weighs 34 ounces, and then a mat that weighs about 2 pounds. Worth every bit of the weight, because we sleep so warm and so comfortable. I can sleep on that as good or better than I sleep in my own bed. So I love it. Yeah.
So as a guiding principle, your math problem there that you're running has to do with comfort, and your weight calculation has a lot to do with comfort. In terms of comfort, you're thinking primarily sleeping well, if you're going to add ounces to stuff. Would you say that's the same with the kids?
In a way, yeah. Now, they're a total different animal. My kids, they would rather sleep with the Z mats, or the the Z light mats, because they didn't have to blow them up. They could just throw them out and sleep on them, and they didn't want a mat that they had to blow up. They're not as comfortable, but they didn't have to blow them up, and they actually weigh about the same. But they didn't have to worry about finding holes and patching them, and it was just easier for them, and to actually break them down at night or in the morning to pick up. It was just fast. So that was pretty much their go-to. I have one kid that kind of bounces back and forth between a blow-up mattress and just a regular close-up. But everybody else is just like, no, this is easy, this is fast, and this is, so for them, that's their comfort level, is the fast, the easy. And for Mindy and I, our comfort level is soft, squishy, and actually being able to sleep right next to each other. So,
Did you take on the bulk of the weight of the food, or did you pass that around? Did you let people carry their own stuff? How did you handle all of that?
So for breakfast, pretty much everybody carried their own food, and primarily for lunch, everybody carried their own food. But for dinner, a lot of times, especially on the PCT, we were cooking as a family. On later trails, we divided up, but we were still also we're pretty much having like one person carry like the meal for the day for dinner. And so it was kind of nice, because if I saw like a kid that was struggling, like Turtle, Tristan, my son, on the AT, we think that he got Lyme disease, like right towards the beginning of the trail.
Wow.
He was just really dragging, like in a way that wasn't typical for him. Like, I'm just completely gassed. And it wasn't like, he's a strong hiker. And so, we got him on medication, but while he was like in recovery, it was just like, all right, we're just eating everything out of his food bag first, to lighten his load, and then if the next kid was struggling, it was like, all right, then we're eating out of their food bag. And so it was kind of the person that was like having maybe the hardest time on the trail. That was like, okay, we're going to lighten their load first. And then the person that was just flying down the trail were like, yeah, just friggin' you carry the peanut butter and you carry the emergency peanut butter. So.
All right, Olen, how about you? Like somebody just said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. No, worse yet, my wife is telling me she's thinking about making me do this with her. What should I think about? What am I doing to prepare?
Thank God for your wife. I think oh man, we could geek out on gear, I'm sure, for hours. I think it's going to depend a lot on the age of your kids, the trail that you're on, and kind of your goals. So when we started the AT and the kids were 4 to 11, we said, all right, they have to be safe. And that means they have to be warm, they have to be dry, they have to be well slept, and they have to be well fed. And starting out, I mean, that was actually pretty much through the entire AT. That was pretty much our goal, which meant that we carried a lot. Like literally when we started, we had a 4-season 3-man tent. We had a 2-person bivy sack, a 1-person bivy sack. We had 3 hammocks, a couple tarp. Like, I don't know. We just had so much stuff. And then we had family literally in Hamburg, like one of the stops on the AT where we could swap out some stuff. So we tried some different stuff. We tried getting the 6 of us into a 4-person tent. It's easier. Our kids were smaller, so it was easier. We ended up kind of settling on 4 kids in a 2-man tent, my wife and I in hammocks. And it worked for us. And we didn't really spend a lot of money on new gear. Like it was my old big clunky stove, which actually went all 3 trails. And it was kind of the tents and stuff that we had, some sleeping pads, and I would take, like Adam was saying, the big 2-person pad for my wife and I. That was a nice luxury item. But again, I was just like, I'm just trying to keep up with a 4-year-old, and the resupplies on the AT are pretty frequent. I didn't have to carry a whole ton of food for long stretches. So things worked out pretty well. But then when we had the baby and we're like, all right, we got to carry a baby. Plus, that means one of us isn't carrying anything of our stuff because we're carrying a baby. Now we need to go ultralight. So I didn't even carry rain gear. I just went with the umbrella. I think Vince, you're a pretty strong believer in the umbrella. We went from just our big, like I had old school Dana Designs backpacks, which are just, they're tanks of backpacks. But I got a big, huge Osprey. We got an Osprey Kid Care, and then actually, Chicken Tramper Ultralight Gear is this amazing place, and they made the kids backpacks, just custom made them for the kids, and that was incredible. And these are ultralight packs, like they are sub 2-pound packs, and the kids were not gentle on them at all, and they survived it. It was pretty impressive. But then we went to like the 3/4 length accordion pads, like just the closed cell foam. Didn't want to have to deal with leaks, didn't want to have to blow stuff up. And just like we were cutting, like, nope, can't afford a full length pad. We're just going for the 3/4 length. That's all the weight we can afford. We went to the Z-Packs tents. We had 2 on the CDT. We had 2 3-person tents. My wife and I and the baby got one, and then the 4 older kids got the other one. And there were 22-ounce tents for a 3-person tent, super light. And actually, they lasted both trails. They lasted the CDT and the PCT. But we were like, all right, now we got to do the actual ultralight stuff. We got the nice down and lightened equipment, like 2-person quilt. And that's a big money item, but man, was it glorious. It was really, really nice. Yeah, no regrets on that money. But yeah, that was, it's the big 3, right? It's the pack, the tent, the quilt, and the pad. We learned we could get away with 3/4 length. Nobody missed having something. We got away with quilts instead of bags. Nobody missed having something. We got away with the ultralight Z-Packs tent that worked out great for us. Actually, on the CDT and the PCT, half the nights we were cowboy camping.
Yeah.
And didn't even set anything up. Although twice that really bit me in the butt, and I was just mumbling angry thoughts to myself at midnight, setting up a tent in the rain. That happened twice. That was unpleasant. But yeah, so it depends on what you're doing. Like if you're taking little kids on the AT and they're walking, all right, so you don't got to do a lot to keep up. You can carry heavy stuff. You're resupplying off, and there's always this, not always, but you're never too far from a safe out on the AT. Versus, if you're hauling long distances across the desert on the CDT or somewhere else, there's no way that we could have carried the heavy stuff we carried on the AT and still survived the CDT. It just wouldn't have been possible. And yeah, what Adam said, your feet, don't try to save money on your feet. Spend the money on your feet. Darn Tough socks are great. Whatever shoe works for you, go with it. Don't worry what the guy behind you or beside you is walking in. Just take good care of your feet, because if you don't, you'll regret it. My wife and I were both physicians. I'm an ER doctor. She's a gynecologist. Legitimately, our medical kit reduced eventually down to a roll of Leukotape. That was our whole medical kit, was just a roll of Leukotape. Could fix anything with it. It fixed gear, it fixed blisters, it fixed whatever it is we needed to fix. Yeah, that was, I guess, our luxury item was a full, giant, heavy roll of Leukotape, and we just share it with every hiker that we found that had a problem with gear or whatever they had.
I have found that when I've gone hiking with other people subsequently, I'll have my pack, and my pack weight is no bigger than, and when I'm not with the kids, it's around 10 pounds. But almost every time, inevitably, I'm pulling stuff out of my pack to hand it to other people when they need stuff. I'm like, how is it that I have all this stuff and I have nothing, no weight?
And I'm still feeling good about giving it away because it makes me lighter. So Adam was saying, or you were saying, you eat the food from the kid that's kind of dragging. That was me. I was carrying all the food, so every day I got lighter, and so I'd be skipping into town before the resupply, feeling light as a feather, and then of course you take on 40 plus pounds of food for the next day.
That would be so hard.
If you're hauling 6 days of food for 7 people, yeah, I'd be over 40 pounds of food at times.
That's miserable.
It was rough, and then usually you guys had the long siestas, and we couldn't do that. Like, we just, our little legs just could not go fast. Even on the PCT, our youngest was 7. And I mean, there just was a top year that you just couldn't get past. You can't do 3 miles in a week. Well, I guess we could occasionally for short stretches, but, so but they could go forever. So instead of taking the siesta, I mean, we just pull out stuff and eat while we're walking, or maybe sit and eat something small. Maybe if we had huge time available, we'd cook a meal for lunch. But oftentimes we just get up and walk slowly. Walk until, you have a reason to stop. Like, you have to filter water, you have to do this, you have to do that. And that's when you stop. Otherwise, we kind of did the tortoise part of the tortoise and the hare and just went slow and all day. And rarely did we stop. Rarely were the kids in bed before dark. That was always the goal. And we almost never made that goal because we just knew what the miles were that had to get done. And the kids were every bit as motivated to finish the trails, or more so than the parents were. And so, it was always doing math all day long. All right, if we got to do 18 miles today and we're starting this time, how many miles an hour do we have to go to get there before sunset? And just that was our math curriculum on the trail.
Yep, trail math. Did you guys, either of you, find any particular resources helpful in terms of doing your research on gear? Is there anywhere you drive people that you felt like were really good?
For researching gear, I guess just the general internet. I don't know. I'm I guess a little OCD and controlling on those things. I just like to go to the websites and pour over all that stuff myself. Yeah, for gear, I guess. For other stuff, I was, just trying to figure out the logistics of everything else, the timing and the weather and all that. No, I needed additional help on that stuff.
I liked,
same.
I particularly liked, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the same thing. I just went to all the websites and did out a spreadsheet and just kind of compared each.
Yeah, you guys we were a little more thorough than I was. I went to, there's a Halfway Anywhere has a end of year survey that he does of CDT and PCT hikers, and I just love it. Like, because it kind of, and he even breaks it down to who finished with what gear. And so I'm like, I think I want to be carrying what those people are carrying. So I'd start my research there and go from there with him quite often.
No, that is a really good resource. Yeah, I looked at that too.
So I have a question for the two of you guys as well. This is an interesting one to me because a lot of people will ask. They'll say, did you feel comfortable walking separate from your kids? Oh, and yours were a lot younger than mine, and so I imagine it was a little different. But I just wondered. I think people tend to wonder about that. Like, do you feel comfortable walking separated from your kids? Adam, I think I know that you do because you lost Turtle in the Sierra Nevada, so he must have been off by himself. But yeah, what was your experience like with that?
Well, at each intersection, we had a little sign that we, draw an arrow and smiley face, just to kind of indicate where where people were going. And then basically, if we were like in a section where there wasn't like a lot of water, that's where we like wait to meet up and so that we could regroup, kind of do a head count, make sure that we hadn't lost anybody. But I would say as a whole, yeah, at the water stops or, okay, we're going to meet at lunch. Like this is going to be a good spot.
Uh-huh.
And, there was times I know that there was a long walk into Rawlins, Wyoming, where honey badger and turtle had gone way up ahead. And I don't know what they were thinking, but they were just like, they were miles ahead. And it was time to camp. And it was windy and there was no place to camp. And it's like, you guys, so I guess it depends on the kids and if they were paying attention. I actually, I felt like it was a good thing for them to kind of spread their wings a little bit and learn. And honestly, my youngest, that girl is so sharp as far as like picking up like good places to camp and spotting. I mean, when actually that time that we lost Turtle in the Sierras, I think she noticed that his tracks were missing from the trail within 100 yards.
Cool.
So,
that's neat.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy how fast she just picked that up. And so anyhow, yeah, I mean, it takes a little bit of trust and it takes a little bit like knowing like, okay, and that, kids are going to survive now. And with Turtle, he was self-contained. He had a tent, a sleeping bag, everything. With my girls, like one girl had the rain fly, one girl had the body of tent, one girl, so it was like, if they got separated and they had to spend the night separate, they kind of all were in trouble. So, yeah, I mean, there is some concern, but, it is.
Did they each carry navigation?
Nope. In fact, pretty much just Mindy and I were the only ones that had Far Out. We had Far Out and we had Gaia, and that was it. Yeah.
Wow. On the CDT, I could see that coming back to bite you. There's a lot of options there, and the trail's not well marked, so it's really a wonder. That one, like PCT, is pretty intuitive. AT's every 12th tree they've painted, but the CDT's got some options.
Yeah. Yeah, and on the CDT and on the PNT, we were a lot closer together.
Oh,
like,
okay.
On the PNT in particular, because that one, there's still parts of that trail that's bushwhacked.
Uh-huh.
We were right on top of each other. Like there wasn't spreading out. So yeah.
How about you, Olen?
I mean, yeah, it's kind of kid dependent, but very age dependent. So by the time he was 14 on the PCT and had already hiked 2 other trails, we gave him a pretty long leash. And he had also just been diagnosed with epilepsy literally the day that we started he seized on the way back from Africa for the first time ever. And so we got in with a pediatric neurosurgeon in Southern California. And we're like, all right, well, we're killing time here trying to figure out what's going on. Let's just go hike the PCT here around. It was up at Big Bear. I was like, let's go to hike a stretch here in Big Bear for the day while we're waiting. We had literally parked our car and had just walked across the street to start hiking. We're going to do, I think, 15 and a half miles of the first day. And we're just across the street and my phone rang. And it's like the neurologist saying, hey, can you make it down for an EEG in like 20 minutes? And I was like, yeah, we can. Everybody back in the car, like went ripping down the mountain to go get the EEG done. Part of that was just kind of showing to him, okay, you have this thing. Yeah, it's not a big deal. You take your meds. You're going to be okay. Be responsible. We're going to give you a pretty long leash. Neurologist says you're unlikely to have another seizure as long as you're taking your meds. You have a good kind of epilepsy, not much to worry about. So here you go. Here's a long leash. You can kind of hike off on your own a little bit behind us, in front of us. And that worked out pretty well for him, actually. And he's not the most responsible kid, so giving him that kind of, I think, helped him tune in, be a bit more aware, a bit more engaged. I think that worked out really well for him. It was harder with younger kids, and even the year before, he was 13, and we tried to kind of give him a bit of a leash, but it was harder, especially once we got up into grizzly territory. I mean, he liked to, whip out his iPod and like listen to books on tape and and he wasn't really in tune. And so we gave him actually a bear spray, half sure he was going to spray himself at some point, but just because he would kind of wander off on his own at times. But yeah, no, the others, when they got up to that age, I think all of the others, actually I only have one of the kids that's gotten to that age, but I think the other one that's now 14, I think or is turning 14. I think he'd be pretty responsible to be able to go off on his own as well. I thought about they're almost, the one that just turned 16. He's almost to the age where I think I'd almost let him just go turn him loose on the ATL by himself if he wanted to. We actually talked about having the two boys back when they were, I guess, 15 and 13. If they wanted to, they could just go to the Shenandoahs for a week by themselves or something and just give them a phone so they could call out. Yeah, so with the ages that we were on the trails that we were on at that time, at those ages, we were together a lot. Well, we'd split up a lot, but it was always a parent going with the group. It wasn't often, other than the 14-year-old, it wasn't really a kid going off on their own. But my wife and I would split up with various kids to adapt to speeds or whatever pretty often. But letting a kid out of sight was pretty rare.
Yeah. I could see that. I mean, we were, it wasn't until the CDT, the second trail, that everybody had navigation. I got them all a phone so they could have navigation. And at that point, we just kind of turned them loose and we pick a meeting spot, or maybe not. We just hoped to rely on the fact that they would know about how far ahead they were. So we did have navigation on the second one. The first one, it was a little different, but the PCT is pretty intuitive once you get sort of in the rhythm of it. And so even when we were separated, it wasn't so bad. But yeah, on the second two trails, they both had everyone had their own navigation, and they were older, So I had 11. Georgie was 11 when we first started. I do remember that somebody came up in Southern California. Some hikers came across and said, "Do you know there's a little girl all by herself up there about a mile ahead?" Well, she's with us, and then we got a lecture. So, but
did you inform her that they got a lot of lectures?
It was a good chance to brag about what we'd done. I was like, yeah, we've been a long way. We've been out here for 3 months now. I think we'll be all right. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't think we really had anybody question our parenting to our face, but behind our back, oh man. So I mean, we had some folks that would hike with us for months on different trails, and yeah, I mean, they would hear it, and they were our friends. They would come to our defense and let us know what's going on. And we're like, we don't care. We're not out here for them. We got nothing to prove to anybody. We're not hiking for anybody else. We're only hiking for ourselves. So we feel that we're being safe. Whatever, they can say what they want.
The criticism was, are they being safe typically?
Yeah, part of it, or that we're like death marching them, that we're miserable, that they're miserable, and we're forced, and they're only smiling for the pictures because we're bribing them. And I'm like, dude, like literally, there are so many people that have hiked weeks at a time with us. Just ask any of them if we're forcing our kids to do anything. No, they're happy kids. They're the ones pushing this as much as any of us.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, if I had any pushback, I wasn't aware.
Blissfully ignorant fans.
That's right. What? I thought everybody liked me.
I'm sure they do.
Man, that's great. So I can't believe it. So you never lost anybody other than Adam. This is for you. You never lost anybody other than Turtle in the Sierra?
No, just Turtle. So I mean, it kind of takes a wrong turn from time to time, but that was nobody. I mean, the nice thing is like if you got away from like the trailheads, right, and you got away from kind of like where there was like a mass confusion because people there was whatever a lot of overuse, then all of a sudden the trail became pretty apparent, and so wasn't that
except the CDT? That's the one I'm just marveling that they walked separate from you and that they didn't have navigation because. We followed out trails, off trail. We followed a lot of wrong turns on that trail. It was a lot of mistaken walking for us on that trail.
We did stay closer. Like PCT, we kind of spread out. That was our first trail. But after that, when we did the PNT, we did get tighter because that trail was it was just. It's a rough trail. I mean, it was just unmarked. Yeah. And basically, if you came to like a fork in the road and it was like, well, there's a distinct trail and there's like a game trail. It was like that game trail was a PNT, so we were hiking a lot closer to each other at that point, and so we did stay closer. On the last trails. Yeah.
What do you think your kids would say if you asked them which trail they would do again if they had to? Which was their favorite? Which would they do again?
I think most of them are CDTers.
Yeah.
Least favorite for all of them is AT. They're like, nope, done.
Poor AT.
Yeah. After that, it's kind of, I don't know, your first love's the PCT because that was your first trail for everybody. So everybody kind of has a love for that. And, but the CDT was really fun too. I would say it'd be a close call between the two, but I'd say about 50-50 between CDT and PCT.
I tell people it's easier for me to pick my favorite kid than my favorite trail.
Wow, which one is it? Go ahead.
My favorite kid? Well, let me tell you, my kids and my wife, they often say that the one they kind of want to do again is the AT. And for us, it was the first one. So I think it is kind of that first love. Big memories of just kind of us all figuring this out together, going through this together. The dynamic was very, very, very different because we didn't have the baby then. So we had the kids kind of grouped in ages. We weren't distracted with the baby. I think we were more in tune with our kids because we didn't have that distraction. And I don't know. I've tried to figure out how much that plays into it with them thinking the nice thoughts about the AT. Personally, I think it'd be fun to take a crack at the AT now, knowing what I know. Doing it this time, doing it ultralight, doing it with an umbrella, doing it with all the different things that I think I could do it better now. But I mean, we liked the green tunnel. There were advantages. You definitely don't get the big views. I think personally, if I had to, I don't know, it's really tough. I do really love just the open, wild, choose your own adventure, the CDT. Like that's tough to beat. All the trails have something going for them, but the winds, Glacier is overrun with people, but it still is pretty just amazingly gorgeous. But I don't know. So are the Northern Cascades. There's just so many great things about all the trails. But the attitude, I think the attitude and the approach on the CDT was really great. I mean, the hikers were by and large very encouraging. We're all in this together. We're all figuring this thing out. All the alternates, the AT, shoot, man, if you miss a single white blaze, you didn't really hike the AT. You cheated the trail somehow. You're not a real through hiker. And that was us on the AT. Oh no, we passed every single white blaze. Now, if I were to do the AT again, I'd be like, you know what? I'm going to aqua blaze and take a canoe down the Shenandoah or whatever. I'd be much less regimented of I have to do this the way somebody says I have to do it. Even the PCT, my wife really wanted to redline the PCT, do the official trail on the PCT. And I'm like, I'm not missing. Crater Lake is not the official PCT. That's just silly to go take this big, long round through some big burn just to say you did the red line. When we actually confronted this was before that, because before that we were hiking down into Portland and out here. What's that alternate right around Portland with the waterfalls?
Eagle Creek, maybe.
Yeah. I was reading about that and I was like, dear, we have to take this. The reviews, everybody says this is worth it. It's amazing. And that was where we were at that time. That was actually our first alternate on the PCT. And it was a real nail and biter for it. But I'm like, look at all these places on this trail where the alternate is cooler. Who cares what anybody thinks? Who cares if we redline it or not? We're together. We're having fun. We're going to, everybody's definition of through hike is different. And I'm not here to judge anybody else's. You can define it any way you want. That's totally cool with me. I don't care how you define it. What we said is we want to lay down connected footsteps from terminus to terminus. We did all three trails were not sequential. We had to jump and skip around for various reasons on all the trails. But we eventually connected our footsteps the whole way, did each one in a single calendar year. And for us, we're like, okay, that's our definition of a through hike. Other people have different stuff. That's totally fine, totally legitimate, whatever you want to call your through hike. But yeah, the CDT, man, that we took every single alternate we could find on the CDT. And it was just so freeing so the CDT was our trail after the AT. And after just feeling like it was so regimented and strict, it just felt, I don't know, it felt really cool. CDT was probably my favorite, but the kids keep talking about doing the AT again.
We came to the AT after the CDT, right after the CDT, and it was really right after. We finished in November, and then we started in March, so it was right after. And there are so many bad choices that the AT makes, and there are so many trails that connect shorter and cleaner, and then, like you say, there's these aqua blaze options, not through the Shenandoahs. We didn't consider that one. but there were several that were kind of neat. Well, there was this kid.
Delaware
Yeah,
River.
so there's this kid hiking with us. We got an extra along, and he was committed to the white blaze. And so there were a couple times when I had to walk a long route with him just to make sure he didn't get lost. My family took the beautiful, somebody said, like the wildflowers are going crazy in this one little section right along a creek, and you can walk that way, and it's much prettier. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. So I had to go with him to do the longer route. So twice
Yes, to him.
I know. So I had to do it with him, and I was a little bit mad for having to have done it. But yeah. But I think
Yeah, I learned.
yeah, I think for us, I think for me, everyone would say Georgie's my favorite. So
Well, you hiked more with her, right? She's the one that latched onto you more for the.
well, I did tell
that's
Aiden.
right. More trail time
I
with
did
Dad.
tell I told my oldest Aiden. I said, well, she is nice to me. Like that does win favor.
Goes a long way.
Take notes. Take notes.
You can try that.
This isn't an exclusive relationship. You can be nice
But that's
to me
kind of
too.
fun because my kids 100% would say CDT, all of them. Georgie, if she were to hike one again, though, would probably do the PCT because she was 11, so she remembers it the least. And so I think she would hike that one again, though I think she would say, at least based on her remembrance now, that the CDT was her favorite.
It is interesting how my youngest couple don't really remember the first trails so much. And I mean, the reality is that we weren't doing the trails for them per se. Like we were doing it for us as a family. Like this is a cool thing that my wife and I enjoy, and that we're going to see if the kids like it. And then lo and behold, they do. And so it became a cool thing. And you know, people are like, yeah, they're not going to remember it. I'm like, yeah, they're not going to remember it, but that's okay. They know that they did it. They see pictures, they see videos. And the thing I can always hold over them is every time they get a little bit whiny about, oh, this is hard. I'm like, shut up. You have walked 8,000 miles. This is not hard. You're fine. You have no excuses now. Ever again. You can do hard things.
When I was working through the book and trying to finish it, there was a lady that came alongside me, really wonderful lady. She's nearly 90 and just really sweet. And I gave her the book to read when it was finally completed. She read it and called me over, and I went and sat at her house. And she said, well, first off, it's a great book, but I would be divorced from you. So I think it's probably reasonable to pause and acknowledge that we're in a pretty unique situation. I think that there are some popular movements in the country. Homesteading. Everybody wants to be a homesteader, but then they go do it and they don't really love it. The idea of a through hike can be probably romanticized. The idea of doing this with your family could be romanticized. But I do think we're probably the possibility of this probably is a reality for us, largely because of who we married, I would say. For my wife, I think that if the foot pain was not a reality, and if there were more showers along the way or opportunities to get clean, she would do this forever. But it really is suited for her, and it really is a unique thing. But I know that's true also. I mean, I had so much fun. I was sitting in the background watching the three of them talk and thinking, this is a unique bunch of humans right here.
Same for my wife. The showers were a great motivator. Just like ice cream was the great. We made a deal with our kids. While we're hiking, we will never walk past ice cream without stopping. So the kids would hold me to it. And I'm like, all right, fair enough, whatever. Those northern New England ice cream sandwiches between two cookies. We ate a lot of those. And I mean, that was the amazing part is like, we're just trying to shove as many calories in our kids as we possibly could. Like whatever you want to eat, that's fine. Just go ahead. Problem is when we stop hiking and keep eating like we're hiking.
You start the trip with kids. You start the trip with kids that could eat off of the kids menu, and then you finish the trip that kids they're eating two full adult entrees. It's like, well, I can't do this.
That's it. So we're set. It occurred to me in an embarrassingly long period of time after starting that we cook meals, and I have my cup of food. And my 4-year-old has a cup that is the same size with the same amount of food in it. I'm like, we should be getting like food. Like I'm like 6 of her. How about I get a little more? Yeah. But I guess that was my wife's way of getting me to lose weight. But no, you're absolutely right. Like without the wives, I guess maybe there's some remote universe where this would be possible, but it sure would be hard. I mean, every time that I get a little bit flustered with my wife over some little thing, I'm like, what other what other woman is stupid enough to go do all these things with me? You know, live in Africa, hike these long trails. Yeah, and they are unique creatures.
And love it.
Yeah.
You know,
Or-
I mean, like,
You don't have to love it. You just have to smile and fake it. Just pretend you love it.
Well, that's true. I would say,
As long as you can fool me,
I
I'm
would say
happy.
that's true, Adam. I think you probably have a unique scenario in which Mindy is just crazy for it. I read her book, and I'm reading every single day, and I'm like, is there another more positive human on the planet? I don't think that there is. It's incredible.
well, I'd have to say, you know, like I won a lot of, like all of us, the three of us. But when you have a partner that backs you in crazy adventures, it's like, phew, you won. So go.
Well,
And enjoy.
I would say,
I think
Monica's motivation is there's beauty, and she loves the beauty. She loves the goodness. She loves the richness of the experience. But it really is that it's good. Like that pulls her past all of the, like, it's not a thing that she would naturally do. Certainly not alone. But I think it's a thing she joins in because she sees the value in it. So I don't think it's sheer delight for her. We would spend a good portion of the time. In fact, I think I may have mentioned this in the telling of the story. At some point, I did look at her and I said, I feel like I'm a single dad taking his 4 kids down the trail with another solo hiker. But she would need more time to be alone, to work through frustration, to work through time. She'd go listen to a couple sermons and get her head right, and then come back into the fray. But she loves it.
I'm guessing you cowboy camped that night.
Well, yeah, we started cowboy camping early, and I was not on the same side of the line that night.
I think we can all agree we married 3 very lucky women.
Very lucky, yeah. They're very fortunate. They chose well.
Just don't ask them.
That's exactly right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So yeah. So what are you doing next? Are you hiking more trails, Adam? I know you got to be thinking about it, right?
Like every day. I mean, it's so hard because I want to take my kids and go, but I've got 3 in college and one that's just like, Dad, I want a normal summer. And I'm like, why? Like, that's normal is so wrong. I just don't, like, I've never wanted to be normal, but you know, yeah, I mean, I'm chomping at the bit to do the TRO. Mindy and I have talked about that being like our celebration, becoming empty nesters. As we kick everybody out of the house. Like,
When is
let's
when
go.
is that for you?
Let's go. So Ladybug, our youngest, is a sophomore. So we got a couple more years. We did a little bit in Europe this last summer, and I did do the Arizona Trail last year just by myself. And I really do want to snag Mindy and Ruby, and I'd take my other kids that are in college if I could get them out, and I want to do the Arizona Trail with them. I mean, that's a fun trail. I know this is about like Triple Crown, but I kind of like one of the things, like the AT, super crowded. The Arizona Trail and the bike trail, not as crowded. The Pacific Northwest Trail, not as crowded. But I will tell you right now, anybody that listens to this podcast, go do that trail. That trail is fast, it's smooth, and you can knock it out in a little over a month. So it's not so much of a whatever, quit your job, burn the boats type deal like the PCT is or the CDT. So I mean, you can kind of make it back in time before the boss actually fills your position if you want. So I kind of want to do that trail again, but do that one with the wife and the one kid.
I thought about the Hey Dude out there, but I will say, in defense of the potential on the AT, you can make it a lonely trail, but you got to go really fast. Once we hit about Virginia, we were the only people that we didn't see anybody. So it was fun because we got to the shelters before the mice and the food got dropped and all that. So it was really good. I liked it. I enjoyed the AT. My kids, mine are with you, Adam. They would never set foot on that trail again if they had their druthers.
Or do it during the next global pandemic. We also had the trail pretty much to
That's
ourselves.
fantastic. Yeah.
That's probably
we
key.
were very spoiled in that regard.
Yeah.
And we were also, because we were skipping around, we were hiking where nobody was at that time. I mean, we were in like Pennsylvania in April. We were just moving around where there was nobody.
that would make it a really interesting trip. Was that the reason? I didn't ask you this before, Olen, but was that the reason for your interesting logistics on the PCT, was to try to find the most convenient times to be in a place?
So, well, with the CDT and the PCT, it was really trying to avoid big snow. Like, I just had a thing where I wasn't gonna put my kids in crampons or put an ice axe in their hands. They're just too little to trust them with that. So yeah, it was avoiding snow. And we did the PCT we did was 2023 when the Sierra had that insane dump. But up in Washington, you guys had like 3 weeks in the 90s, like in spring or something. So you guys had an early melt up there, but the Sierras were crazy deep that year. So yeah, I was skipping around to there. Same thing on the CDT. It was kind of skipping around to avoid big snow and then come back to it after it melted. So like I said, I had my spreadsheets all laid out, kind of where stuff was likely to melt off first. And kind of go to
when
those
did
places.
You do Colorado?
Colorado, we were some of the first on the CDT that year. It was like, I think a May 17 start, March. I think it was March 17 that we started at the Mexican border. And we went more or less straight up to the Colorado border, except the last stretch from Ghost Ranch up was huge blowdown, huge like post holing. And, getting up to Ghost Ranch, my kids were post holing through like 100-yard, 200-yard sections, and they thought it was great. And I was like, yeah, but after a quarter mile of this, you're not going to think it's so great anymore. So we actually jumped up and in the Great Divide mountain bike route, which I think Adam may have done that too. I don't remember. But yeah, so we then came back down to do that. But by then it was, fires. So we were in fires. So actually, we road walked clear from, Coomber's Pass all the way back around to Ghost Ranch. That was a miserable road walk, but we did it. Whatever, it's fine. Then, the San Juans were just way too socked in with snow. We were going to then start from the north end of the Great Divide mountain bike route north, but the night before we started, there were like feet of snow that dumped. So like, all right, well, let's go do the Great Basin up in Wyoming. So we just jumped up there. Yeah. And then after the basin, we came back down and did Colorado. So we were in Colorado, mostly it was June. Mostly the month of June was Colorado. Actually, yeah, into like middle of July was when we got out.
Yeah, we did that. We were in Colorado in early September, and got an early storm. And then it was a bad storm, and it ripped everything else up high. Like everything up high was bad. So we stayed low.
Yeah, well, you guys made your own alternate through the San
Well,
Juans,
we came
right?
low. Well, we came back up into the San Juans. Our alternate was from Twin Lakes down to Poncha Springs, I guess, is what we did. But we walked right along the Arkansas River on that old telegraph line.
Oh,
it's
beautiful.
amazing. Yeah, we actually came into town down there. I want to say it was Salida. We came into Salida, and the guy at the bar there went to get a 6-pack of beers and bring them to the room to Monica. And I was telling him what we did, and the people in the bar were like, "You walked along the Arkansas? You're not allowed to do that." Well, we did it.
Oops. I didn't see a sign.
I kept running up to the railroad crossing signs, the private property signs, and standing right in front of them so Monica wouldn't see them.
Yeah.
But that's what when you said set up the tent in the middle of the night, that's what I was thinking. We were going to cowboy camp because we were on private property there, not on the railroad, but we actually had to cross a fence, and like we were in somebody's backyard. I don't know where we were, somewhere near Buena Vista, and I was like, you guys got to be quiet, no lights. Like it was after we night hiked a little, we turned off the flashlights for the last mile or so, and we were just laying down cowboy camping. And 30 minutes later, I wake up and it's like first drops hit me, and I'm like, Dad, we got to set up tents on somebody's property. So now I don't have line of sight. Like I don't know what's going to happen, but we got out early and we were okay. But yeah, that was a fun alternate. I enjoyed that alternate. It was a good one.
They've been the first ones to do it.
There are other people. There's always other people that have been there before you. That's for sure. So, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, but at the same rate, there's probably nobody who did the CDT exactly the same way
cool?
you did.
I think that's one of the cool things. Henry loved that. Henry loved that about it. We came up out of Ledor, I think. Yeah, I was coming up out of Ledor, out of Len High Pass, and you come up, And there's that big sweep that it takes around the right-hand side, and it just shoots up in all those canyons for no particular reason. And Henry's looking, and he's like, Dad, what are we doing? That pass, that pass we're going to be at in 3 days is right there. Why don't we just walk straight to it? And I half debated it. And I guarantee if it were later in the trip, I would have done it. Because we did later on in the trip, we were more like, hey, that looks like it'll go where we're trying to get. And we just take off right across the open terrain and have a great walk. So, yeah, it was cool. But you both of you, well, yours was a flip. Yours was a flip on the CDT. You were northbound, right, Adam?
Yeah, we're northbound.
Okay.
And we're pretty much pretty much continuous all the way until we got to dealing with the national park up in Glacier, and we flipped right at the end, which was just the way it had to be to make that happen. But that was kind of fun.
Glacier would have been fun. Did you both of you get to do Glacier?
Yeah. That was actually where I got the nickname Spreadsheet, because it was the 7 of us. Plus, my father-in-law joined us just for Glacier for the last push to the border. Plus, we had 2 other hikers with us. So we were a party of 10 trying to push our way through Glacier together. And, oh, man, with all the permitting and the campsites and everything, that was a mess. But I spent a long time one night figuring it out, and then I went and first guy there at the permit office to get the permits the next day. And yeah, got it to work out.
That's great.
But yeah, we went up to the lake. Oh man, I'm blanking on the name of the lake. But we went up to the lake, and then we hiked back out east to the Chief Mountain crossing too. So we actually tagged both of the termini up on the north.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, we were. That was the year that the reservation was closed. Ours was COVID, and so we had to walk from Marias Pass. We had to walk 50 miles on the road, and then walk up through West Glacier. So we've not yet gotten to do the east side.
It's the CDT. What's another 50 miles on the road?
No, exactly. That's great. All right. Well, what am I missing, you guys? I feel like I've picked your brain a good bit.
Did you guys ever feel unsafe out there with kids, with family, with wives?
Adam, you?
I'll tell you, I didn't. I'll tell you, I was very fearful all the way up until we got on the trail. Because, like, anytime the kids were out playing or something right before we were leaving, I was like, do not sprain an ankle, do not break an arm, like, just be careful.
You can break your arm, it's fine, just don't break it.
Yeah. But, like, once we got to the trail, we had my mom broke her leg on the PCT with us. That was fun, and we had Tristan pass out on the CDT. So we had a few like minor to major things happen, but never felt like it wasn't something that we could handle. Like it was. I wish I was hiking with 2 medical doctors, but I felt like we were pretty good. I did have leukotape. I did have leukotape.
We did have one health scare, but it was not that significant. But Georgie does occasionally break out in hives, and we were more scared about the ranger that was approaching because we were in Yellowstone, and we had phoned in a permit from our sat phone, but we didn't have anything paper to prove it. And so he's approaching. We're getting nervous. Georgie's breaking out in hives. Monica gets nervous and gave her 2 Benadryl, and she was 12 or 13. And we still had 8 miles to walk. So she face planted a couple times between there and camp. That was pretty bad. But the thing that I thought of when you asked the question was I was thinking about mostly other people. And what's interesting, what was so fun on those trails is for the most part, people are pulled into the vortex of that trail and that trail community. And so most of the people, even if they're people that under normal circumstances running into them on the street, you might be nervous around them. You have this sort of common goal and sort of are bonded in some pretty cool ways. There's a lot of heavy drug use in those communities and stuff like that otherwise would make me nervous, but it kind of mostly dissipated. But there were a couple times, once on the CDT and once on the AT, when we ran into people that were, pretty shady characters. There's one in-town shelter that we came to on the AT. There was a guy offering cocaine to the boys in the shelter. And you can tell he was high, and then he was trying to give me a tent. He had 2 tents, and he was trying to give me one of his tents. I was like, I don't want your tent. But he got mad at me for not taking the tent. So we went and camped, and I was like, all right, everybody, just lay right beside each other. I'm going to be in the middle. If anything happens, if you hear anything, if anybody touches you, wake me up. So there was one like that. And then out in the middle of nowhere, Colorado, middle of nowhere, we were trying to camp, and there were some campers set up sort of various different places. And there was a fifth wheel that was set up, and we went across the road it was kind of a 2-track road, and we went across the road from the fifth wheel and began to set up our tent. And this woman came out. There was a bunch of people there. It's kind of looked like a Florida redneck party. I was like, what are my Florida people doing out here? But she came out and started screaming at us for setting up in her view. I was mad. I was spitting mad. Like, I was like, I'm not moving. And Monica was like,
I'm tired.
But Monica talked me into moving, and so I moved, and I was so mad that we moved. I wanted to go over and just have words with all these people who probably had guns and all sorts of stuff, and we were totally defenseless. But then the great part was some guy pulls in a pickup truck with the topper on it, pops out and sets a tent right where we had our tent before. So I was like, well, that's good. But yeah, we had a couple of human altercations, but beyond that, there was almost nothing that we ran into. There's a lot of near misses, isn't there? Like, Aiden slipped, cut her side open and stopped herself on a log. And then you look down where she would have gone had the log not stopped her, but there's a lot of those kinds of things that are sort of these real near misses where you feel really providentially protected, like it was kind of over and over and over again, what could have happened consideration after the fact, but nothing that I had time to dwell on before it happened. So, yeah.
Did the women already talk about kind of homeschooling stuff or how that was navigated?
I don't think that they did. No. Did you guys do any of it?
We pretended that we did.
Yeah, that's important.
We kind of, and we wanted to keep them engaged. We just did spelling tests and math, do spelling and math, do stuff in your head. And so the one who was 4 on the AT was 6 on the CDT, and she kind of was too young to kind of participate in it in the AT. She could count. So one day she wanted to see how high she could count and really badly wanted me to listen to her. So I listened to this 4-year-old count to 800, and boy, was that painful. And then on the CDT, she figured out that this was kind of like a way to get my attention, like do math with daddy, that then you can, keep his attention, keep him talking to you, whatever. So she would count backwards from 100 by 1s and then 2s and then 3s and then 4s and then 5s and then 6s and then 7s until she is literally by every single number until she's counting backwards from 100 by 49. And she's like, okay, so 100, 51, 2, negative 47. Or I'd make her go into the negatives. But then I remember we were walking through the winds, and the kids wanted to night hike, right? Now, that was another one of their goals, is they wanted to do a night hike. All the other hikers talked about how awesome it was to night hike, different sights and sounds and smells, and it's all this whole different romantic story when the other hikers are telling us. They really wanted to do it. So all right, well, we're hiking out to Pinedale. If we night hike, we'll just be out there about sunrise. So sure, let's go ahead and night hike. So we're going, and 10 o'clock, the kids are like, yeah, I'm done. I'm tired. They're falling asleep. Okay. So we cowboyed. But the next morning, we're getting up and we're walking out, and the 6-year-old turns to me and says, Daddy, there's 1,440 minutes in a day. I'm like, shut up, you little freak. What are you talking about? She's like, well, 60 times 24. So 60 times 20 is 1,200. And then 60 times 4 is 240. And 1,200 plus 240 is 1,440. That's something's very wrong with you, child. She loved doing math and give me spelling and whatever. So that was it. But then after the AT, we did bribe our kids. We said we'd pay them 10 cents a mile, but we got to decide what it was paid for. So the AT was, 2,200 miles. So they got $220. So we bought them each iPods. And then the idea was we're going to put classic literature on the iPods, and they can listen to classic literature while they hike. It ended up being all these mermaid fables and garbage stuff that I was like, please just put it in your earbuds. I don't want to hear this anymore. But the oldest actually did go through quite a bit of that. The second's not so much, but So we kind of faked that with school. But like you, I mean, we were homeschooling anyways. I'm not sure. Adam, did you guys have to homeschool to make this work?
Yeah, but we also we ran into a good situation with the public schools. There's like a kind of a hybrid school out here, and they were very cool about working with us. So we basically, when we got to where we could kind of send an email, we just like send an email and check in, and we could just kind of crunch everything and get it all when we were home. All the kids worked really hard and turned in a bunch of homework and got everything done ahead of time. And then just to kind of keep the truancy officers away, we just checked in like once a resupply and said, yeah, hey, we're here and we're doing phys ed and geology and maybe a little astronomy. Yeah.
History and yeah.
That's really funny. Yeah, Olen's from Africa and I'm from Florida. We don't know what a truancy officer is. They don't care.
Right? Yeah. We were not on anybody's radar in any school district in America. Nobody was checking in on us. But yeah, no, it sounds like, I mean, that your kids were willing to work that hard to get through it on the rest of the time. That's pretty amazing. We wouldn't have been able to do any like legitimate schooling on the trail. There was no way. But our kids got far ahead, and then, we took off a ton of time and they kind of fell back to where they should be. But yeah, no, it's really cool that your kids were really, and that's a sign that they really wanted to do this, and they were working that hard on the off season, the non-hiking season, so they could pull this off.
We did it.
Cool.
The first trail we made up homeschool in the summer, and that was part of the motivation for having everybody have a device on the second one, was both navigation and that we could direct the schooling. And we had, my cousin teaches at a classical school, and so he gave me some guides and questions for some books that he had put together for some American history. So we all did that together. But we just kind of pass out assignments in the morning. Everybody would listen, and during our lunch, we would chat about it as well. And we started with great intention about, we're gonna listen to all the great stories that have ever been written. I listened to War and Peace a couple times, but it was really infuriating because they would depart. They'd be like, we want mysteries or something. So they read everything Dorothy Sayers has ever written, everything Agatha Christie's ever written. Like it's nonstop stuff, and it would turn to more adventure stories too, like Endeavor and Unbroken and Into Thin Air and all that stuff. So like the genre definitely moved towards stuff that would keep them inspired. But Monica, the end of the first trail PCT, had this vision for the value of the stuff that we were doing in terms of their understanding. Like, we did trail math, not quite to the degree that your daughter was doing it, Olen, but we were doing a lot of trail math, and it was fun to watch them calculate, liters per mile, elevation gain, what it meant, what the elevation meant. Anything under 500 wasn't too bad. A mile wasn't too bad. Anything over 500 a mile started to get a little rough. And, they just did a lot of that kind of work naturally. And I think Monica kind of came home with that heavy appreciation for the value of this kind of doing education, and eschewing some of those other things. And so, unfortunately, she got home with that vision of what she really wanted to do, but then she also tacked on the requirements. And so they didn't actually come away with less to do, they came away with more to do. But until we did the second set of 2 trails, after that, you just had to abandon some of the sciences and some of the maths. You just had to say, well, we'll leave that to the future. And if they want to be missionary doctors to Chad, they're going to have to pick up some of these biologies on their own.
There's not a lot of competition for the job, I can tell you. The interview process wasn't that lengthy.
But they're like, do you have a pulse? Yes. The answer is yes.
Can you find Chad on a map? No? Okay, doesn't matter. Sure, we'll take it anyway. You guys think of like how it positively affected your kids? Do you have anything concrete that you've been able to see to nail down, or any way that it negatively affected your kids or set them back at all?
Well, I can say kind of along the same lines as like the education goes. I've seen my kids, especially as they've had to now they're off in college and they're branching out. They've got their own budgets because of the way they kind of budgeted on the trail as far as like resupplies. They learned a little bit about budgeting that I think, most high schoolers, aren't learning, as far as like, oh, this is whatever. I need to I have this much money to spend, to buy books and to pay for tuition and to pay for housing and to, am I going to buy a car? Am I going to ride a bus and ride a bike? And so I've seen that positive effect, in their lives that I think they picked up from the trail. And I know that there was things, just as far as like our family when it came to how we worked our like town days, because, like if you went into town and it was like, okay, we're going to go into town. And then if you're going to go out to eat and you're going to get a hotel and you were going to refly, all of a sudden it's like, well, you could drop a ton of money. And so we kind of, decided like, we're going to make some trade-offs, so we changed it. So it was kind of like every kid at the beginning of the trail basically had like a one night in a hotel. So they could kind of say like, hey, we're going to spend a night in a hotel. So most trails, like we got 6 nights in a hotel total. And that was kind of the way that we budgeted things. So I think that they took that and have run with it. And I've seen that. I think that's a positive effect in their lives because they're spending their own money, and I think they're managing it well. So I think that's positive. As far as the negative goes, I think everybody has that kind of, what do I do now that I'm on trail? Whether it's a big goal because trails are awesome, and then the other thing is, that you eat whatever you want when you're on trail, and then you get home trying to rein that all in is problematic as well. So yeah, I've seen that problem too.
It's a problem for the parents as well.
It's a big problem for the dad.
Just bulking up for the next hike. That's all.
That's really good. Yeah, I think for me, Aiden is probably the one. My oldest, my daughter, Aiden is probably the one that I think probably felt the most potential negative effect in that she put life off for another year and started school late. So she's the oldest graduating senior by 2 years up at her college, and so it's a little awkward. She was it was very kind of her to delay life, but it was a hard decision, and I let her make it for that third trail, the AT, and was really grateful that she decided to do it. But it came at a cost, I would say, for her that she has paid. I don't know that she would say it was a negative. I think she rose to the occasion. It probably was worthwhile to her, but I see some of that in her. But as far as the positives, like even just yesterday, Georgie's working at the local Chick-fil-A, and she said that the manager who used to play soccer with her at the local high school, this girl that's managing her, said she loves having Georgie work there because she can ask Georgie to do anything, and Georgie's like, yeah, I'll figure it out. Like stuff she doesn't know how to do, but she's willing to try and figure it out. And so I would say some of that comes from that experience of, having to be creative with the resources that you have. And so I've seen it there. I've seen it in Henry. Henry, came home he went part-time to a private school here so that he could play soccer there at the school. And when he showed up, one of the things that he said was, I just don't think these kids have had to suffer. Like, I think, they just, like, they complain about homework like they've never had to suffer. So, that kind of thing, I think they do relate to the world around them. But then in terms of the impact, Henry came home from a summer camp. He worked at a thing, it's called Johnny and Friends. And it's Johnny Erickson is a Christian lady that broke her neck diving. And she started these summer camps all around. I mean, she just has lots of different ministries that she runs, but this one in particular is to families of children with disabilities. And so every kid gets to buddy up with one of these kids. And it just really lit Henry's world on fire. He just thought, that's like, I want to be a part of stuff like this. And I said, so in a week, he's going out to do a Knowles semester and get his wilderness EMT, and with a view to really serving in summer camping environments for the rest of his life. So I would say all of those things sort of connect backward to this kind of experience for sure. Contentment with little, I would say. They are content with little. I have not created in them an ambition for building a kingdom on this earth. Like I would say that they have a real sense of, how do I contribute in a meaningful way to the people around me? And I would attribute a significant portion of that to that, which is ironic. I mean, the irony in that is that this was a sort of a meaningless venture that we set out on. In some very real way. But for them, I think it built them a sense of desire for meaning and purpose that's manifesting then in the real world. Me, I'm left to just dream about hiking more, but them, I think they've really made the connection. So, yeah. How about you?
I would just say that we've touched on some other things, and I won't mention any negatives, but just one positive is that my kids who grew up in Africa without really having any contemporaries around them. I mean, they didn't really have any social contacts with first world people, learned how to socially interact with people from, I mean, it's predominantly white out there on the trail, but there are all ethnicities, just maybe not in a demographically, like not in a way that all of America is, but there are all demographics out there. There's every religion out there. I mean, there's liberal, there's conservative, there's wealthy and poor. I mean, there's people doing it on vastly different budgets. There's college kids out there, there are retirees out there. And I got to see my kids kind of interact and converse and do exchanges with all of these very varied and different people from so many different backgrounds. And my kids could very comfortably and fluently talk with people about, weather and hiking and which pit latrines are the best and water sources and distances and campsites and resupplies and I mean nature and scenery and astronomy and seeing them be able to kind of shift fluidly back and forth between so many different groups almost effortlessly in ways that they never had the chance to do before. I think for their social development, that was really cool to see. It wasn't, interacting with kids their age. Usually there were rare opportunities, but I think that was a really cool thing to just be able to witness my kids doing. And that was a huge growth for them from where they had been, where they didn't have any opportunities for that.
Yeah.
I mean, the trail is a great equalizer. It brings everybody together kind of down to the same plane. You're all walking the same mile, going through the same weather, eating the same garbage. And yeah, I think that was a great way that their eyes were opened because when we were in Africa, we were not on the same level. I mean, we coming from as Americans, we had so many more opportunities than the folks that we worked with that were local to the country there. And so my kids could never quite ever really interact as equals. They could try, but they would be treated differently because they were different. But then to be on the trail where you're so superficially different from everybody around you, but you're going through everything that's exactly the same, so you are the same. That was just really fun to watch.
So they've kind of had a double transition, like it's a post trail life transition and a post Chad transition in a way.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe the trail was a nice kind of in between stop for us. We've often actually wondered if that worked out to our advantage or just screwed up our kids more.
Nothing that I've benefited of, nothing that I've done right, I did by design. If I've done anything right, it just happened to me.
Just ask my wife.
That's for sure. I find myself, well, here's another question, and do you guys, because you hear all these stories about how unsuccessful thru-hike attempts are, and I was sure that meant, I'm not much of a statistician, but I was sure that meant the likelihood of us finishing a single trail was very low. And then when we finished the first one and began the second one, I thought maybe that was luck or whatever. Finished the second one and then started the third one thinking, of course we're going to finish. Like there was something very assured about it. But I just wonder about that dynamic of being a family if it's not an aid, like if it's almost not an argument for doing life as family in this world, like there was something about it that almost made it easier than the other people around me that I watched.
I mean, so if you have an injury, and I think all three of us would say we were so fortunate to be able to walk so many miles with so many people and not have to not have to terminate the hike for an injury. I mean, that's where the statistician part is pretty phenomenal. But, a lot of people that get off the trail injured, maybe they're not definition injured. Maybe it's kind of more of a hurt thing, but there's other stuff going on. And, we're not missing home because we bring home with us. It's the people. And I think a lot of people that are getting off trail are getting off because they're lonely. If you don't like just watching other hikers, they had so much time alone with their thoughts to just get inside their own heads. And I think probably a lot of people just couldn't handle it. We never had that luxury to get inside our own heads off by ourselves because it was constant engagement. And I mean, I never had a chance to think about my aches and pains because I'm thinking about, okay, are my kids okay? What do I have to do to get my kids through this? All that stuff, or I never to think if I'm having a good time. Is this fun? It was always, okay, what makes this fun and a good time for my kids today, for this hour, for this mile? So yeah, I think for us, it was absolutely very advantageous to be as a group. I think it worked really well. The injury bug was a stroke of luck. The rest of it, yeah, I think it definitely worked to our advantage. And I thought about renting out my third child, who's now 11. I thought about renting her out because, I mean, her name is Addison. On the trail, she's Angel Wings. And we just say, you know what? You can tell if Angel Wings is asleep because she's not talking. If she's awake, she's talking. If a through hiker comes by and just needs company, $20 for the day, just feed her. She can carry her own weight. She can keep up. It's fine. You don't even have to talk back to her. She'll just carry on a monologue at you. She'll talk at you all day long. It's fine. Yeah. But no, I think it was a huge help to have the family along. Well, I mean, you guys have both hiked solo right now without them. So you can see, you have a better experience of how much it's helped versus not helped.
I think that saying's true. They say if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think that's true. You can go fast all by yourself, but if you really want to go the distance, bring family. They're great, and there were definitely times where, one or two of the kids was down, or, I distinctly remember this day in Washington where it was really cold and Mindy had spilled dinner and I mean, it was her low point on the PCT. And if she would have been by herself, she would have gone to the next resupply or the next town and she'd been off trail, but it was just, she just needed somebody there. And, and the whole family was there, and, she made it through and then there wasn't too much further where I had like an injury and I was like, man, I'm not sure if I'm going to make it, and we talked it through and we were spitballing ideas and kind of got me through like my head, like what's really happening to my body. And it was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, we're fine. We're good. And so, yeah, I really do. I think having a family, and a family is much, much stronger than a tramley, and a real trail family, is the best. So, I mean, we've got it. And so that's great.
Yeah, I talked to Don, who hiked the year that we were on the PCT recently. His podcast will come out before this one. And he did a very unusual year of hiking, and one of his goals was to be alone. And he spent 21 days without seeing anyone walking through the Sierra and didn't come off trail, and said he came 21 days later. He said his family had decided that morning that if they didn't hear from him that day, they were going to call emergency because he just didn't come out or talk to anybody. And I just thought, I never had to endure that kind of a mind space. He went way down the rabbit hole. It was like solitary confinement or something, like you'd really have to wrestle with things inside yourself that I just never had to. Just having somebody to care for and to take care of was a significant part of that trip for me. Just sort of having always that idea. My impression with both of you guys is, and I think there's something, I just finished reading The Anxious Generation today. It's this book by a sociologist, and he's talking about the effect of the smartphone on this generation. And safetyism, he calls it, the effect of safetyism, where he says Gen Z, I think, begins. Gen Z is where parents begin to protect their kids and fear letting them experience, the potential for danger or harm. And so they wouldn't let them go out and play in the street. And so they ask people before Gen Z, what age were you when you were allowed to do that? They 6 to 8. And then after Gen Z, it's like 10 to 12 or something like that. It's a shift. So the safetyism combined with the phones, the smartphones, become this just huge problem. And it's another thing that, like you say, I stumble into this gift that the trail was for my kids because it exposed them to risk, which he says is key, and it removed them from the potential for that early interaction with that kind of online presence or unreal interaction with the world, and enforced that real interaction, like you say, Olen, with this first world, for your kids with this first world community, but but this very interesting subset of people in a very real and sort of shared task. So I'm sort of, my mind is sort of full of that. And I do think that this experience for families is a good way to rip the Band-Aid off. It doesn't have to be a 3-month hike, but a month-long hike would be such a powerful way to rip the Band-Aid off for people that are a family that are disconnected and connected through their smartphones to this unreal world. And it would be a way for them to connect together, and not only together, but to separate and isolate from that kind of thing. So in that vein, I was thinking, man, my impression is from both of you as well, that if anybody had any questions and wanted help dreaming up this idea, that I would love to get to help. I mean, that's kind of why we started that Families That Thru-Hike Facebook forum, and I don't, wouldn't necessarily have to be somebody intent on a thru-hike, but just for, to go out for a month into the woods with your family and try to make a walk. I'd love to help anybody. And my impression is that both of you would as well.
Yeah, 100%.
But I will tell you, Adam, I will talk him into the gossamer gear, and for the opposite reason that you suggested the Osprey. But that's because the reason that we begged Gossamer Gear to sponsor us was because my son carried a Gossamer Gear, the Gorilla, on our PCT hike, and he beat it to death, and it never tore. Now, it did have a bunch of rips in it, but that's because he carried an empty Coke can from Washington all the way to the border. So I kept telling him, I was like, Henry, You have to ditch the Coke can. Like, throw it away. It's trash. Nope, I'm taking it with me. So he took it all the way to the border from Washington.
My kids would carry the dumbest, like everything was a treasure. And this started on the first hike on the AT when they're little, and we're letting them get away with murder. Like, whatever makes you happy on the AT, whatever, you're little, you're fine. And I mean, they would collect nuts and rocks and sticks and whatever. And on the CDT, oh my goodness, so much road trash. They were cleaning up the roads. So I'd find their hip belts just like full of rocks or in the bottom of their pack or whatever. And I'm like, what is this? If you can carry that, you can carry some of my weight right now, because I'm carrying way too much. On the CDT, twice my daughter carried antlers, like a rack of antlers for days. I think each time was probably about 4 days that she carried a rack of antlers to somewhere where she could offload it. And then we got it. I mean, it's here in our house now. We got it back later, but she was out getting sheds. Yeah. The treasures. And that's just it. It's what they consider treasures. And I'm guessing like the three of us, I never considered myself to be a super type A driven people, but just the fact that we have done these things, maybe we are pretty goal oriented, and I'm very stubborn. I mean, and maybe just to discomfort by virtue of what we've been doing in Africa for ages and ages. But I would definitely have, what I would tell people is to have a different view of success. It doesn't have to be we all did Triple Crowns, but it doesn't have to be a successful completion. I mean, if your view of success is bringing your family together closer, I mean, that's what it should be. Kids having fun out there in nature, leave the iPads at home. You're together, you have undivided attention with each other, you're having this experience, you get to go through a little bit, hopefully not too big, but a little bit of hardship together, come out the other side smiling. Yeah, and I mean, if your goal is a thru-hike, that's awesome. Maybe temper expectations. Like you said, most people start out and don't finish, but just enjoy the journey. By the time, because you guys, I'm sure I'm not the only one that like the last stretch of a trail is just like, all right, we're getting there. Like, no matter what, if we have to go on crutches, like we're getting there. Let's just get there, and then the utter loss once you actually get there. And what are you going to do the next day besides hobble around on your aching feet? But don't necessarily have that focus on the terminus. Just enjoy every step out there with your kids. It is so much fun. It's a memory that you'll have forever that you'll never get another chance at. I mean, my oldest is just turned 16, and hearing you guys talk about kids going off to college, man, you guys are going to make me cry here, and I'm going to have to go plan another hike before this kid goes off to college. I mean, just enjoy these times, every single step, as much as you can.
Yeah, I would have said when somebody asked me about the most significant thing about the trail, there was a moment with Georgie on the Pacific Crest Trail. We'd come through the Sierra. Our southbound the threat was the Sierra. So once we hit Kennedy Meadows South, we're done. We're fine. We're going to make it in theory. But we enter the desert, and the next stretch to Tehachapi is no easy it's not easy. It's a lot of elevation gain and loss, and there's a long way between water. And so we're heavier. We're carrying heavier water. I'm not carrying 100 pounds worth of water, Olen, but I'm carrying some heavy water. And Georgie and I are climbing a hill, and she's having another, we called it Cry 30, just melting down, and it hasn't happened for a long time. And she just looked at me, and I said, Georgie, you going to be okay? And she's like, yeah, I just have to cry, but I thought I was done crying, Dad. And then she said, Dad, I just want to know, like, what do you do when you feel the despair coming on? And I can remember thinking, oh my gosh, like this is why I came. Like I came for this experience with my 11-year-old and this moment. And I've always sort of thought that encapsulated that experience. But then the other day when the ladies were on, and Monica was talking about laying out with the whole family side by side under the stars, with the stars just wrapped right on your face, and laying side by side and laughing. You know, you're warm because you're together, you're laughing, it's hysterical, and you just think, my gosh, like it is not going to get better. It's not going to get better than this moment. And so it's probably, part of me is I'm trying to chase the reality of that in my day-to-day life, and it's really hard with all the distractions. But I loved that experience with my kids. And I think I envy that for everybody. I'm jealous for so many people that I know to get to have that kind of experience with their kids.
Such a defining moment for the whole family as a unit.
Adam, any parting words of beautiful wisdom?
Not really. I'm pretty much out of words of wisdom, but I think just go and do it. Just go and do it, and you won't regret it. I think anything that you sacrifice, whether it's monetarily or career-wise or whatever, it's well worth it in what you gain as a family. And I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if your wife made you listen to this because she's dreaming of a Thru-Hike, any of the three of us are happy to help in any way we can, other than talk you out of it, because we would want to talk you into it as the best thing. Because, my goodness, my kids are going to be the best thing that I have to have said. They're the best words I've spoken in this world. And to have gotten this time with them, I just really feel like this is such an obvious, and it's such a rolling downhill sort of experience. It's so easy. You just push the ball down the hill on this, and it counteracts so much of what the world is offering that is not good. And this just gives them so much of you, and it gives you so much of them. And man, what an experience. So you're not going to get talked out of it between the three of us.
You hear those stories about people on their deathbeds. They never say, it's like, oh, I wish I would have spent more time at the office, or I wish I would have spent more time with my business. It's they wish they would have spent more time with their family. So
yeah,
like, just think of that.
Or more time scrolling TikTok.
More time doom scrolling.
That's good. Thanks. Hey, thanks so much, you guys. This has been absolutely wonderful for me. Really good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
A lot of fun. A lot of great memories.
It's fun to think about. And more to come. All right. We'll talk to you guys again soon. All right.
Sounds good.
All right.
You got
Thanks,
it.
Vince.
Thank you.
Hey, that was a really fun time for me today, getting together with these two guys. They are interesting and wonderful people who really, truly have a deep love for their family, and it is evident. It's irrepressible, and it's really fun to be with them and learn from them. Hope you enjoyed the show today, and tune in next time for some more Pretty Good at Talking. Thanks very much.